It was a Tuesday morning like any other, except somehow it felt heavier. The kind of heaviness that creeps up on you slowly, like the thick fog that had settled over the city overnight. The alarm on my phone rang sharply at 6:45 a.m., piercing the quiet of my small apartment. I reached out blindly, my fingers fumbling across the nightstand to hit the snooze button, but the sound only silenced for a few minutes before returning again. I groaned softly, burying my face into my pillow, wishing for just 5 more minutes of sleep. But the cold air that slipped beneath the thin blanket was a cruel reminder that the day was already waiting for me. I finally forced myself out of bed, stretching slowly as I stood. My legs felt heavy and reluctant, like they belonged to someone else. I shuffled to the bathroom, flicked on the light, and stared into the mirror. The person looking back was a little worn out. Eyes red from too little sleep, hair sticking up at odd angles, and skin a bit paler than usual. There was a faint crease between my brows that hadn't been there last week, as if the worries had been carving their way deeper into my face overnight. After brushing my teeth and washing my face with cold water, I dressed in my usual clothes. Dark jeans, a gray sweater that was just a little too loose, and my favorite worn leather boots. I liked these boots because they reminded me of the trips I had taken years ago, but now they mostly carried the dust and footsteps of the city streets. I grabbed my bag, glanced around the small apartment once more, the staircase in my building was creaky behind me, and with the elevator broken since the summer, I was forced to walk down 4 flights. At first, it had been frustrating, especially on mornings like this when I felt like my body was made of lead. But recently I'd started to think of it as a kind of forced morning exercise. My lungs burned slightly by the time I reached the ground floor, but it was the kind of discomfort that felt earned. Outside, the city had already started its daily rhythm. The sky was painted in soft shades of orange and pink, though the sun had only just risen. The smell of fresh coffee and baked bread drifted from the corner cafe, mingling with the faint scent of damp pavement and fallen leaves. People bustled past, already absorbed in their routines, some walking briskly with headphones in, others lingering in small groups chatting and laughing. The air was cool and crisp, hinting at the approach of autumn's chill. I walked into the cafe and was greeted by Kevin, the barista who always seemed to remember my order without me saying a word. "Morning," he said with a smile. "The usual?" "Morning," I replied, feeling a bit more alive just from the warmth of the place. "Yeah, extra shot of espresso, please." While he prepared the coffee, I checked my phone. The screen lit up with new emails, notifications, and messages, but I resisted the urge to dive in immediately. There was something sacred about that first sip of coffee in the morning, a quiet moment before the chaos. I took a slow sip, savoring the bitter warmth, letting it chase away the last threads of sleep. Walking to the subway station a few blocks away, I dodged cyclists weaving through the sidewalks and avoided a couple of people walking their dogs. The city was alive with movement and noise, distant sirens, the low hum of traffic, snippets of conversation drifting through the air. I liked these moments, the way the world moved around me even if I sometimes felt stuck. A small crowd had gathered on the platform, and the frustration was palpable in the tight jaws and tapping feet. I stood quietly, clutching my coffee, scrolling through messages from friends. One text stood out. "Hey, how are you holding up? Haven't heard from you in a while." I stared at it for a moment, unsure what to say. I wanted to say I'm fine, but that would have been a lie. I wanted to say I'm tired, but that felt like complaining. So I just locked my phone and looked up as the train finally rolled in with a screech. The car was packed, and I squeezed into a corner near the door, gripping the pole with one hand while holding my coffee in the other. A man nearby sneezed loudly, and a faint melody escaped from someone's headphones. The train lurched forward, and we swayed together like leaves caught in a gust of wind. I closed my eyes for a moment, letting the rhythmic clatter of the tracks lull me into a temporary calm. Arriving at the office building felt like stepping into a different world. Glass walls, polished floors, the hum of computers and quiet conversations. I passed the security guard without a word, the routine so familiar it almost felt automatic. The elevator ride to the 27th floor was a chance to catch my breath, squeezed between a handful of other tired faces. At my desk, the screen glowed with dozens of unread emails and notifications. I sighed deeply and sat down, opening my laptop. The day stretched ahead with an endless list of tasks. Reports to write, meetings to attend, deadlines to meet. I forced myself to focus, typing away while the minutes slipped by unnoticed. Sometimes the hardest part was just sitting there, pretending to carry a leftover I didn't really want but forced myself to eat anyway. I sat by the window, pushing food around on the plate, staring down at the I decided to walk home. The air was cool and fresh, and the sound of my boots on the pavement was calming. I passed a park I used to visit often. It had an ancient oak tree and a weathered bench where I had spent many quiet afternoons. Children were playing, their laughter echoing through the air like a melody I hadn't heard in a long time. A woman walked her dog past me, and we exchanged polite smiles. I sat down on the bench for a while, watching the world go by. It was a moment of peace, a small island in the rushing river of everyday life. The city continued its endless dance around me, but for once, I felt like an observer rather than a participant. I took out my phone again and looked at that message I had ignored earlier. "Hey, how are you holding up?" It seemed to be waiting for an answer. I typed slowly, tired, but okay. "Want to grab coffee sometime this week?" I hesitated for a moment, then pressed send, hoping it was the right thing to do. Back at my apartment, I kicked off my boots and changed into sweatpants. I reheated some soup, not because I was hungry, but because I knew I should eat something. The TV played quietly in the background, a familiar show I'd seen many times before. It was comforting, like white noise that filled the empty spaces. Before going to bed, I stood by the window and looked out over the city. Lights flickered on in buildings across the street, one by one, like stars waking up for the night. Somewhere nearby, someone was playing the piano softly, the notes drifting through the quiet air. A siren wailed in the distance. Fading slowly, I took a deep breath and let it out slowly. The day had been ordinary, uneventful, and quiet. But in its simplicity, there was something meaningful. Not every day has to be extraordinary. Sometimes just surviving is enough. And tomorrow would come with its own noise and rush, and I would be ready to face it. I decided to change into something more comfortable and start winding down. The day's fatigue was settling deep into my muscles, making me ache in places I hadn't even realized were tense. I stretched my arms above my head, feeling the tiny snap of release in my shoulders, then padded over to the small kitchen area. Opening the fridge, I stared blankly at the few containers left. Leftovers from previous dinners, a carton of milk nearing its expiration, a bag of apples. Nothing inspiring. I grabbed a container of soup, microwave reheated it, and settled onto the couch with a worn blanket draped over my legs. The TV was on, but my attention was elsewhere. My mind had begun wandering again, retracing the day's moments, the small interactions, the little frustrations. I thought about Kevin, the barista. He always greeted me with such easy warmth, even on mornings when I barely managed to grunt. I wondered what his life was like outside of that tiny cafe, what dreams or struggles he carried. Was he as tired as I was? Did he have people waiting for him at home or a pet to come running to his feet? For some reason, the thought made me smile quietly to myself. My phone buzzed again, and I glanced down. A reply. "Coffee sounds good. Let's pick a day." Simple words, but they felt like a small lifeline thrown into the sea of monotony. I typed back quickly, suggesting a day later in the week. I didn't want to get my hopes up, but even the idea of something different, a break from the routine, was enough to brighten the evening. After finishing the soup, I put on some soft music, a playlist I'd created years ago but rarely listened to anymore. It was filled with songs that were mellow, comforting, the kind you play when you need to breathe. I sank deeper into the couch, letting the melodies wash over me. The hot water was a relief against the chill of the apartment. I closed my eyes, letting the stream run over my skin, washing away the day's heaviness. The noise of the city faded behind the tiles and steam, and for a few minutes, everything felt clean and fresh again. Drying off, I caught my reflection in the bathroom mirror once more. The tired eyes were still there. I struck up a conversation with a woman standing next to me. We talked about the weather, about how long the line was, about the best cafes nearby. It was brief, nothing deep, but her laughter was genuine, and it made the journey feel less lonely. I realized how much I miss small connections like that. The human moments that don't make it into emails or meetings but fill the cracks of a day with warmth. At work, the day was filled with the usual tasks, but I found myself more patient, more present. Maybe it was the rain, maybe it was the small conversations, maybe it was the message from the night before reminding me I wasn't entirely alone. During lunch, I walked to a different cafe, one I'd never tried before. The owner was an older man with kind eyes and a gentle smile. We talked about the neighborhood, the changing seasons, and how important it was to find moments of peace. I ordered a sandwich and a cup of tea, savoring both like rare treats. That evening I met Kevin for coffee. We chose a small spot I liked near the park, the one with the old oak tree. The conversation flowed easily, about work, books, music, and the little joys we found amid the chaos. For the first time in weeks, I laughed without restraint. It felt like a breath of fresh air, like the first bloom after a long winter. Over the next few days, I noticed subtle changes. The walk to work didn't feel quite so heavy. The emails seemed less like an avalanche and more like tasks to be managed. I started writing more in my notebook, capturing moments. A stranger's smile, the way light filtered through the trees, the taste of good coffee. Thursday brought another small surprise. I found an old photo tucked into a book at the library. A picture of my neighborhood from years ago, quiet streets and children playing in the sun. It reminded me that change was constant, and that sometimes the hardest part was learning to move with it. Not because it had changed, but because I had. The weight on my shoulders was lighter, the fog inside my mind clearing bit by bit. I even caught myself humming a tune on the subway, a small victory in the battle against monotony. When the weekend finally arrived, I didn't have grand plans.